It all began in the quiet depths of space, far from Earth, in the massive halls of the Empire's command. Among all the leaders and commanders, there was one who was different. He was known as General Korath, a figure respected for his wisdom and calm judgment. Unlike many others, he didn't crave war or power. He believed in balance, in thinking carefully before acting. And right now, he had a warning that he knew could not be ignored. Korath had spent years observing different planets, different species, and their growth. He had studied humans from afar, watching their small blue planet with curiosity. At first, they seemed fragile, almost insignificant. But the more he watched, the more he realized something remarkable. Humans were not like the other species in the galaxy. They were unpredictable. They had an energy that could not be measured by simple calculations. Even when faced with disasters, wars, or threats, they kept surviving, learning, and growing stronger. When Korath brought his findings to the Imperial Council, he did so with urgency. "You do not understand them," he said, his voice firm but calm. "These humans, they are not weak. They have faced extinction on their own planet and survived. They adapt, they innovate, and they fight in ways we cannot predict. If you try to control them, if you try to destroy them, it will not go as planned." The council members, however, were not impressed. Many of them laughed at him. To them, humans were nothing more than primitive beings, living on a small rock, unworthy of attention. "They are weak," one of the council members said. "They have no real technology, no power. We could conquer them in days if we wanted. Why waste time worrying about them?" Korath felt frustration, but he didn't lose his calm. He knew the truth, and he also knew that arrogance could lead to disaster. He brought out the records he had gathered over the years, images of humans building, fighting, surviving disasters, and uniting against impossible odds. "Look at their history," he said. "They survived droughts, wars, diseases, famine. They have united against greater threats than you can imagine. Underestimating them will be your greatest mistake." Even as he spoke, the council was already making plans to send a fleet toward Earth. They saw it as an easy opportunity, a chance to expand their empire with almost no effort. Korath tried again, raising his voice, urging them to pause, to consider. "I am telling you, this will not end the way you think. Humanity is not just another species. They are dangerous in ways you cannot calculate. Leave them alone, or you will regret it." But the council did not listen. They brushed aside his words, calling them fear-mongering. Some accused him of being soft, of lacking the strength needed to lead in times of expansion. Korath stood quietly, realizing that logic alone would not convince them. He had to act carefully, and perhaps prepare for what was to come. Knowing the council would make their choice regardless of his warnings, as the Imperial fleet prepared to leave for Earth. Korath spent long hours observing humans more closely. He watched their cities, their small spaceships, their communication networks. And he saw something that made his heart race, not with fear, but with certainty. These humans, despite appearing small and weak, had something unique. They had creativity, courage, and an ability to work together even when everything seemed impossible. They had survived natural disasters, wars, and internal conflicts that would have destroyed almost any other species. Korath knew that the coming conflict could be devastating not just for humans, but for the Empire as well. And yet, he could only watch as the council ignored every warning he gave. For the first time in his long career, he felt powerless to stop what he knew was coming. He wished there was another way, another path that could prevent the bloodshed he feared. That night, as Korath walked through the quiet corridors of the Imperial Command Station, he looked at the stars and thought of Earth. The small, fragile-looking planet shining in the darkness seemed almost peaceful from a distance. He whispered to himself, Leave them alone. Just leave them alone. But he knew his words would fall on deaf ears. By the next morning, the fleet was already in motion, leaving their home system behind. Korath remained behind, conflicted. He had done all he could to warn the Empire, and yet the decision was not his. He could only hope that humans would remain cautious, that they would have the chance to survive what was coming. And so, the first chapter of this story began not with a battle, but with a warning that would go unheeded, and a general who would have to watch history unfold in a way he had tried so desperately to prevent. Korath knew one thing for certain. Underestimating humans would be the Empire's greatest mistake. The Empire was full of pride. They believed that their power was absolute, that no species could stand against them. Earth, a small blue planet, seemed insignificant in comparison to their massive fleets and advanced technology. To the Council, humans were just a tiny obstacle, a minor nuisance to be removed if needed. Korath watched in silence as the Council planned their next moves. The fleet being prepared for Earth was enormous, filled with weapons and ships designed to overwhelm any resistance. The generals in the Council spoke with confidence, as if victory was guaranteed. They laughed at Korath when he warned them about humanity's unpredictability. "You worry too much," one of them said. "Humans are primitive. They cannot fight us. They will surrender, and it will be easy." Korath knew they were wrong. He had seen how humans acted when faced with danger. Even in small numbers, they found ways to protect themselves and adapt. Their strength was not in numbers alone, but in their creativity, determination, and ability to unite against threats. He tried again, showing the Council examples of human survival. He shared records of entire civilizations that had been on the edge of collapse, but had managed to rebuild stronger than before. "They are not like other species we have conquered," he warned. "They do not break easily. They do not give up. They adapt. And when they fight with something we cannot calculate." But the Council ignored him. Their arrogance blinded them. They believed technology alone was enough to conquer any world. They could not see that the humans' real strength was in their unpredictability and resilience. Plans were made to send reconnaissance ships to Earth to study the planet and prepare for eventual conquest. The Council thought this was just a formality. "We will observe them, then take what we want," one commander said with a smirk. Korath felt a deep unease. The humans were unprepared for what was coming, and yet he knew that they might survive it anyway. He spent hours studying Earth, looking at the patterns of human life. He saw wars, yes, but also moments of unity. He saw how humans worked together in impossible situations, helping each other even when danger surrounded them. He watched how they built, created, and innovated, even with limited resources. The more he watched, the more certain he became that the Council's plan would fail. Humanity would not bow, and if attacked, they would respond with a force the Empire could not anticipate. As the reconnaissance fleet approached Earth, the humans noticed strange signals in their orbit. Satellite networks detected unusual patterns, energy spikes, and transmissions unlike anything Earth had ever seen. The world governments began to communicate with each other, sharing information quickly. They had disagreements, of course, but they also had experience uniting when threatened. Slowly, a global awareness formed. Something beyond Earth was watching, and it was not friendly. Meanwhile, Korath pleaded with the Council one last time. "Even a small provocation could trigger a response we cannot control," he said. "If you harm them, even slightly, they will fight back. And I promise you, it will not be easy to stop them." The Council, however, was determined. They saw Korath's caution as weakness. To them, humans were still primitive, fragile, and easy to manipulate. They ignored his warnings and ordered the fleet to continue, believing that any resistance could be crushed with overwhelming force. Korath knew that the coming days would change everything. If humans survived, the Empire would never look at the galaxy the same way again. And if they failed, countless lives on Earth would be lost unnecessarily. He could only hope that somehow humans would be ready for what was coming. On Earth, people had no idea what was approaching. Scientists noticed strange anomalies in the skies, unusual signals in the atmosphere, and satellites detected movements that could not be explained. Governments began emergency meetings, trying to understand what was happening. They suspected a foreign threat, though nothing like what was actually coming. At the same time, ordinary people continued their lives, unaware that a vast, powerful fleet was heading toward their planet. Some noticed strange phenomena in the sky, mysterious lights or patterns, but dismissed them as natural occurrences. Korath, watching all of this from afar, felt a strange connection to Earth. There was something about humans that went beyond strategy and survival. It was their persistence, their ability to keep going against impossible odds, that set them apart. He knew that soon the Empire's arrogance would clash with that human spirit. The Council's fleet continued its approach, confident and unafraid. Every commander believed in their superiority. Every ship was armed and ready. Yet for Korath, each passing moment was filled with dread. He understood the risk, the unpredictability, and the resilience of humans better than anyone in the Empire. He could only prepare himself for the inevitable, knowing that once the first contact occurred, nothing would ever be the same. Humanity was about to be tested in ways no one expected, and Korath, who had tried to warn the Empire, could only watch and hope that the humans would survive what was coming. The story of humans, and the Empire was about to begin not with an attack, but with arrogance, misunderstanding, and a mistake that could cost the Empire more than they ever imagined. And Korath, who had pleaded for reason, would witness the first signs of what he had been warning about all along. The first signs of the Empire's approach did not go unnoticed. Across Earth, satellites and telescopes picked up strange movements beyond the planet's orbit. Scientists noticed unusual energy signals, patterns that could not be explained by natural phenomena. At first, some believed it was just another anomaly: solar flares, meteor activity, or equipment glitches. But the signals grew stronger, sharper, more precise. Governments around the world began to take notice. Emergency meetings were held, and military intelligence worked tirelessly to analyze what was coming. For the first time, countries that often disagreed found themselves sharing information, pooling their resources to understand the unknown. News of the unusual signals spread quietly among top officials, and while panic was still contained, the sense of urgency was undeniable. Meanwhile, the Empire's scouting fleet drew closer. Small, sleek ships scanned Earth's defenses, carefully mapping its cities, power grids, and military installations. To the humans observing these signs, the ships were invisible, cloaked by advanced technology, but the disturbances in space and communications hinted that something powerful was nearby. Scientists debated the meaning of these anomalies, but they could not see the fleet directly. Korath watched from the Empire's command, filled with unease. He knew that the humans were beginning to notice, that curiosity and caution would awaken them faster than the Council expected. The Empire saw this as a minor observation mission, but Korath understood the consequences of even the smallest provocation. If the humans discovered the fleet too quickly, panic would spread, but he also suspected that humanity might surprise them, and he was right. The humans did not panic blindly. Instead, they reacted with surprising speed. Across nations, emergency communication networks activated. Governments shared data about the strange signals, satellite images, and atmospheric anomalies. Military and civilian scientists worked together in ways that no one in the Empire had anticipated. Protocols for disaster response and defense were adapted to the new, mysterious threat, People on the streets began noticing unusual phenomena, strange lights in the sky, sudden bursts of energy, and flickers in communications. At first, most dismissed these events as minor glitches or natural occurrences. But as the anomalies grew, more people paid attention. Some looked up at the sky with curiosity, others with fear. Yet all of them sensed that something beyond their world was reaching out to them. The Empire's fleet moved with precision, scanning Earth's communications and observing its defenses. They sent reports back to the Council, claiming that humans were unprepared and easy to manipulate. But Korath knew better. He had studied human behavior for years and could see the early signs of organization, adaptation, and strategy. Even without knowing what the fleet truly was, the humans were already beginning to act in ways that would surprise the Empire. Korath's warning had been ignored, but he watched closely, hoping to see the humans survive what was coming. He knew that the first encounter would set the stage for everything that followed. If the humans responded intelligently, they might gain an advantage. If they panicked, the result could be catastrophic. On Earth, the first real contact was subtle but undeniable. A satellite in orbit detected a small disturbance, a signal, a brief pulse of energy, something that clearly did not originate from the planet itself. Military analysts were the first to recognize its significance. A message was sent up the chain of command. Unidentified anomaly detected near orbit. Possible artificial source. The warning spread quickly, and within hours, scientists and military leaders across the globe were working to understand the anomaly. While the general public remained unaware, the leaders realized that Earth was being observed by an intelligent force. They had no idea of the scale of what was approaching, but the knowledge alone was enough to spark action. Korath observed all of this with a mix of hope and dread. The humans' response was exactly what he had expected. They were cautious, yet determined. They did not panic, but they did not ignore the signals either. The ability to respond intelligently in the face of the unknown was exactly what made humanity dangerous in the eyes of the Empire. Despite his warnings, the Council had decided that this was an opportunity. They saw the humans' early awareness as a chance to test them, to measure their abilities before the full conquest. "Let us see how they react," one commander said. "It will be entertaining, and then we will crush them easily." Korath shook his head silently. He knew that the Council's arrogance would be their downfall. Underestimating humans had always been a mistake. He had seen it in their history, and now, watching from space, he could see the first hints of what that mistake would cost. On Earth, work continued behind closed doors. Scientists built temporary observation centers. Military units prepared contingency plans, and communication networks were strengthened. The anomaly pulses became more frequent, and humans began tracking them as carefully as they could. They still had no idea of the size, scale, or intent of the approaching fleet, but their ability to coordinate quickly and share knowledge was already a sign that the Empire had misjudged them. As the scouting ships continued their silent approach, small accidents occurred, fleets moving too quickly, instruments failing, or signals being intercepted in unexpected ways. Humans noticed these irregularities and adapted. They did not fully understand the technology they were encountering, but they improvised. They created methods to detect disturbances, predict anomalies, and prepare for potential threats. Korath watched all of this unfold, knowing that the humans' resilience was already evident. They were not a species to bow easily or surrender without thought. Every small adaptation, every coordinated response, was proof of the determination that made them unique. He had warned the Council, he had pleaded, and now the humans were unknowingly demonstrating why he had been right. Finally, the first real encounter became inevitable. The scouts began transmitting low-level pulses, testing Earth's defenses, probing for reactions. Humans detected these transmissions almost immediately. They did not panic, Instead, they worked together to decode the signals, track the sources, and predict the fleet's next movements. Korath smiled faintly. He knew the Empire was about to learn the hard truth. Humans were not a species to be underestimated. And though the Council remained blind to the danger, Korath understood that the first sparks of resistance had already begun on Earth. The stage was set. The humans had seen the first signs of the Empire's approach. They did not yet understand the full danger, but they were preparing. And Korath, the general who had begged for caution, could only hope that their resilience would carry them through the trials to come. The story was no longer just about observation. It was about preparation, adaptation, and the first real steps toward confrontation. Humanity was awakening to a threat they could not yet see fully, and the Empire's arrogance would soon meet the reality Korath had warned about. The day the Empire made its first real move, the skies above Earth remained calm, at least to the human eye. Most people went about their daily lives, unaware of what was happening far above them. But for those who had been tracking anomalies, it was a moment of intense focus. The small disturbances in orbit were no longer random, they were deliberate, targeted, and growing in intensity that the Empire's scouting ships, which had been silently observing for weeks, were now joined by a larger vessel, one built for testing defenses. It was a destroyer-class ship, enormous compared to anything humans had ever imagined, bristling with weapons designed to intimidate and destroy. From the Empire's perspective, it was a simple test. They wanted to see how humans would respond, to measure their abilities without committing to a full-scale attack. Korath watched in silence. He had pleaded again and again with the Council, warning them that even this small move could trigger something they were not ready to handle. He knew that humans were unpredictable. They had survived countless threats on their planet, adapted to disasters, and innovated when faced with impossible odds. A warning shot or a small attack could set off a chain reaction the Empire could not control. The destroyer appeared in orbit, its presence unmistakable to Earth's satellites. It hovered silently at first, scanning the planet, gathering data, and sending it back to the Empire. Then, without warning, it fired a warning blast into the ocean near a major city. The explosion created a massive wave, throwing ships off course and sending a shock through nearby coastal towns. While no humans were immediately killed, the effect was clear. The Empire was testing the waters, showing their power, and expecting compliance. What happened next shocked the Empire. Humans did not panic or flee blindly. Instead, they responded with speed, coordination, and intelligence. Military forces activated emergency protocols, and scientists worked alongside engineers to analyze the alien technology. Satellites began tracking the destroyer in real time, mapping its trajectory and energy outputs. Humans did not yet fully understand what they were dealing with, but they adapted quickly. Improvised defenses were activated. Coastal cities that had experienced the wave had emergency measures in place, evacuating people to higher ground. Warning systems spread through radio, television, and the internet, reaching millions within minutes. Humans had faced natural disasters, wars, and accidents before, and they applied the same principles to this unknown threat. Korath could see the reactions unfold from orbit. He felt a mixture of relief and concern. Relief because humans were proving the very resilience he had warned the Council about, and concern because he knew the Empire would misinterpret their actions as weakness rather than intelligence. The Council believed that humans would panic, crumble, or beg for mercy. Instead, they adapted and prepared. The destroyer, confused by the humans' unexpected response, tried to adjust its approach. It fired another blast, this time targeting a remote communication station. Humans responded by moving key infrastructure underground, shielding equipment, and even improvising countermeasures using existing technology. They did not have the weapons or speed of the Empire's ships, But their ingenuity made up for what they lacked. Korath's warnings had always been about unpredictability, and now he could see it in action. Humans were learning, improvising, and resisting in ways no one in the Empire had anticipated. Their ability to work together, to share information quickly, and to adapt their strategies on the fly was already causing delays and confusion among the Empire's forces. The Council, still confident, saw the destroyer's limited success and declared it a minor setback. "This is exactly as expected," one commander said. "We have only tested them. Soon they will submit." But Korath knew better. The humans' first response had already demonstrated something extraordinary. They would fight, and they would fight intelligently. Across Earth, ordinary people were also playing a part. Citizens helped each other evacuate from danger zones, shared information about safe areas, and even improvised basic warning systems for communities without direct access to official updates. Fear existed, yes, but it did not paralyze them. Instead, it motivated them to act, to protect one another, and to survive. Korath watched these developments with growing admiration. He had studied humans for years, and now he saw them in action for the first time under direct threat. Their resilience, their ability to adapt under pressure, and their willingness to work together were unlike anything he had observed in other species. The Empire's underestimation of them was becoming painfully clear. The destroyer's next attack, a more targeted energy pulse aimed at Earth's satellites, was met with an ingenious human response. Scientists quickly deployed reflective shields, improvised energy absorbers, and rerouted communications through backup satellites. The pulse caused disruption, but it did not achieve the Empire's goal of panic or compliance. Instead, it forced humans to accelerate their preparations and become even more resourceful. Korath sent a final warning to the Council, one he hoped they would listen to before it was too late. They do not break. They adapt. And if you continue, you will see what I have been warning about for years. But the Council, confident in their technology and power, ignored him once again. They believed the destroyer had been sufficient to intimidate the humans. As night fell over Earth, the planet remained tense but organized. Humans had survived the destroyer's initial tests and had proven their ability to respond under pressure. Emergency systems were in place, key personnel were protected, and global coordination had reached unprecedented levels. Humanity had shown its first true measure of strength against an enemy it could barely comprehend. Korath, observing from afar, realized something important. The humans' intelligence, creativity, and adaptability were not weaknesses. They were their greatest weapons. The Empire's arrogance would soon clash with this reality, and the Council's dismissal of his warnings would cost them dearly. The first attack had been a failure in its intended purpose. Instead of submission, it had awakened the humans to the scale of the threat they faced. And for Korath, it was a confirmation of everything he had known all along. Underestimating humanity was a mistake the Empire would regret. The stage was set for what would come next. The humans had defended themselves against the first real assault, showing that even a small planet could resist a powerful empire. Korath could only watch and hope that the Council would finally see reason. But deep down, he feared that the next step would push the humans even further, and the consequences would be far greater than anyone could predict. After the Empire's first attack, it became clear that humans were not going to be easy to intimidate. The destroyer's failure had already sent a ripple of doubt through the Council, though they refused to admit it openly. They believed humanity could still be conquered eventually, but Korath knew differently. He had watched the humans' response, seen how quickly they adapted, and he understood that their full potential was yet to be revealed. On Earth, humanity had shifted from defense to preparation for a more strategic response. Scientists and engineers had been studying the alien technology captured from the destroyer's scans. Though they could not fully understand it, they were already finding ways to use its principles to strengthen their own systems. Military strategists worked alongside inventors, creating methods to anticipate attacks and protect civilians. Cities were reinforced, satellite networks hardened, and communication systems made resilient to interference. But the most impressive development was how ordinary people contributed. Volunteers helped create emergency shelters, shared information about threats in real time, and improvised local warning systems. Communities that had never worked together before learned quickly to cooperate. Their combined efforts multiplied the planet's defenses far beyond what the Empire could have expected. Korath watched all of this unfold with a growing sense of awe. He had long predicted that humanity's strength was not in numbers or raw power, but in creativity, adaptability, and unity. And now, humans were proving it with every passing day. Even small actions redirecting energy flows, modifying existing machinery, or coordinating evacuation routes were forcing the Empire's scouts to adjust their plans constantly. The Empire, confident in their technology and firepower, did not see the danger coming. They sent more ships into orbit, expecting to intimidate and test human defenses further. They believed the humans would break under pressure, but each move they made was met with ingenuity and resourcefulness. The humans were not just defending, they were learning, adapting, and preparing to strike back. One of the most remarkable changes occurred in the field of intelligence gathering. Humans began intercepting alien communications, decoding patterns, and predicting the movement of the Empire's ships. Even with limited understanding of alien technology, their ability to connect dots and adapt gave them a critical advantage. Korath knew this was a turning point. The humans were not merely reacting, they were beginning to anticipate the Empire's moves. Small human strike teams began testing strategies of their own. Using satellites, drones, and rapid deployment vehicles, they started targeting weak points in the alien scout systems. They did not have the firepower to destroy large ships, but they could create confusion, misdirection, and disruption. Even minor setbacks caused frustration among the Empire's commanders, who were used to absolute obedience and predictable targets. Korath sent another warning to the Council, this time with urgency that could not be ignored. You see what they are capable of. Even with limited technology, they adapt faster than any species I have observed. If you continue, they will not simply defend, they will strike, and they will surprise you at every turn. But the Council, blinded by pride, dismissed his warning once more. They believed their numbers, advanced weapons, and empire-wide coordination would eventually overwhelm Earth. Korath sighed silently, knowing that the mistake would cost them dearly. Humans, meanwhile, continued to grow stronger with each passing day. Engineers had begun experimenting with captured alien data, producing defensive systems that could absorb energy pulses or redirect attacks. Cities became more than shelters, they became strategic points, designed to protect lives while maximizing the effectiveness of Earth's limited resources. Communication networks linked civilians, scientists, and the military in ways that ensured rapid sharing of information. Even under interference, the Empire launched another assault, larger than before, expecting a swift victory. But they found humans prepared, coordinated, and adaptable. Their attacks were met with calculated resistance, and many attempts to disable critical systems were foiled by improvisation. Humans were learning, evolving, and using the very principles of strategy that Korath had anticipated. Korath realized that the Council had made a fatal error. They had assumed that Earth's size and lack of initial firepower made it an easy target. They had assumed that humans would panic or be too slow to react. But they had underestimated the human ability to innovate, to unite under pressure, and to fight with intelligence rather than just force. As the confrontation escalated, humans began to understand the importance of timing and strategy. They did not blindly attack the alien ships. They carefully studied them, predicted their movements, and targeted vulnerabilities, even small victories causing a ship to misfire or retreat temporarily were celebrated and used to learn more about the enemy. Korath, observing from afar, knew that the humans' potential was becoming undeniable. They had survived the first assault, adapted to the destroyer's tactics, and begun striking back in ways the Empire had not anticipated. Their ingenuity and resilience had grown into a force the Empire could no longer dismiss. The Council, however, continued their plans for a full-scale intervention. They believed sheer force would eventually crush humanity. Korath could only hope they would finally see reason before it was too late. But he feared they would learn the truth only after the humans had fully demonstrated the power he had long predicted. Humanity's progress was not just technological, but also moral and psychological. People had come together despite differences in language, culture, or nationality. Communities coordinated efforts to protect the vulnerable, share resources, and provide information to those in need. Fear existed, but it was channeled into action, into determination to survive and protect the planet. The stage was set for the inevitable clash. Humans had proven their ability to adapt, to learn, and to fight intelligently. They were no longer simply defending, they were preparing to take the initiative. Korath knew the Empire's arrogance would soon meet the full force of human ingenuity, and the consequences would be far greater than anyone in the Council could imagine. By the end of this phase, humanity was no longer a passive target. They had become a force to be reckoned with, one that could challenge even the Empire's most confident assumptions. And Korath, the general who had begged for caution from the very beginning, finally saw the truth being realized before his eyes. Underestimating humans was a mistake the Empire would deeply regret. The humans had survived the first attacks, adapted to alien tactics, and were ready to strike back strategically. Korath knew the next steps would be critical, and the outcome would depend on whether the Empire continued to ignore his warnings or learned from the humans' extraordinary resilience. The Empire had made its choice. They ignored all warnings, confident that their fleet, their weapons, and their technology would ensure victory over humanity. But Korath knew the truth. The humans were not weak. They had adapted, learned, and grown stronger with every challenge the Empire had thrown at them. What was about to happen could no longer be avoided. From orbit, the Empire launched its largest assault yet. Massive ships moved into position, energy weapons primed, and countless drones and fighter vessels ready to attack key locations on Earth. The Council believed this would end quickly. They imagined human cities crumbling, armies defeated, and the planet brought under their control within days. But they had not accounted for the humans' full potential. On Earth, the warning systems activated almost immediately. Governments coordinated globally like never before. Satellites tracked the incoming ships, analyzing their speed, weapons, and formations. Civilian scientists worked alongside military strategists, finding creative ways to counter attacks. Entire cities were evacuated or reinforced. Humanity was not panicking. They were preparing. Korath observed the unfolding events silently, a mixture of relief and dread in his heart. Relief because the humans were proving the very resilience he had long predicted, and dread because the scale of the conflict was about to explode. The humans were about to be tested in ways no species had ever been tested before, and the Empire would soon understand the consequences of ignoring him. The first strike came over major population centers, energy blasts creating shockwaves in the oceans and cities. But the humans were ready. They had deployed shields, rerouted power grids, and used makeshift energy absorbers to minimize damage. While some destruction occurred, it was nowhere near the total devastation the Empire had expected. What shocked the Empire most was not the humans' defenses, but their response. Instead of running or hiding, humans began striking back. Using improvised technology, adapted from their own innovations and partially understood alien systems, they created targeted counterattacks. Small strike teams disabled drones, misdirected energy blasts, and forced alien ships to retreat temporarily. Every time the Empire assumed control, humans found a way to disrupt their plans. Korath sent another desperate warning to the Council. Do you see what I have been saying? They do not break. They adapt. They fight. If you continue, the losses will be unimaginable. You cannot underestimate them. But the Council, still blinded by arrogance, ignored him. They continued sending wave after wave of ships, convinced that their firepower would eventually crush Earth. The humans' ingenuity and unity were now fully visible, and it was beginning to shake even the most confident commanders in the Empire. Humans fought not just with technology, but with strategy and creativity. They used the environment to their advantage, coordinated multiple teams to target vulnerabilities, and constantly adapted to the alien attacks. Ordinary people played their part as well, maintaining communications, helping to evacuate civilians, and improvising solutions in real time. Fear existed, but it fueled determination instead of despair. Korath watched, realizing that the Empire's greatest mistake had been made long before this battle. They had underestimated a species that refused to submit, a species that grew stronger under pressure, and a species that refused to be predictable. Humanity's ability to unite, innovate, and act with purpose was now fully evident, and it was overwhelming even for an empire that had conquered countless worlds. The battle raged on, with humans striking back strategically while defending their planet. Alien ships, expecting easy victories, found themselves retreating from attacks they did not understand. Even their most advanced weapons were countered by human innovation. The humans were no longer just surviving, they were taking control of the conflict, turning the Empire's arrogance against them. Korath felt a quiet satisfaction. His warnings had been ignored, but now the humans were showing what he had predicted all along. They were not just survivors. They were a force the Empire had never faced before. Every failed attack, every disrupted strategy, every small human victory was proof that they could not be underestimated. The Council finally began to realize the truth, but it was too late. Their confidence had blinded them for too long. Every decision they had made, every dismissal of Korath's advice, had led to this moment. The humans had adapted, coordinated, and fought back with ingenuity and courage that surpassed even the Empire's most experienced expectations. By the end of the confrontation, the Empire suffered losses they had never anticipated. Ships were damaged, fleets forced to retreat, and strategic positions lost. Humanity had survived the assault, defended their planet, and demonstrated a level of resilience, intelligence, and courage that would be remembered across the galaxy. Korath watched silently, knowing that the human strength had been proven. He also knew that this battle would change the Empire forever. They had ignored the warning to leave humanity alone, and they had paid the price. The humans had not only survived, they had shown that even a planet thought to be weak could resist and overcome an empire. Earth stood victorious, battered but unbroken. The Empire had underestimated them, and the lesson had been harsh but undeniable. Korath reflected on the events, realizing that humanity's potential had always been there, waiting for the moment to emerge. Their creativity, adaptability, and unity had turned the tide, and the Empire would never forget it. The battle was over, but the story was just beginning. Humanity had proven that they were not a species to be controlled, intimidated, or ignored. And Korath, who had begged the Empire to leave them alone from the start, knew that his warnings had been vindicated at last. The humans had survived, adapted, and conquered the impossible challenge of standing against one of the galaxy's greatest powers. And in the quiet that followed, Koroth realized something important. Sometimes, the most underestimated beings are the ones that change history forever. Humanity had survived, and the Empire would never make the same mistake again.